So, some of you know that I'm a management consultant by trade. That's what I do, which means I and my colleagues help usually big corporations figure out how to do what they do better. That's what we do. And so there was something that was popular about 20 years ago. And Adam, you might be a little too young to remember this, but there was this thing that vision statements kind of came out. And a vision statement was a compound sentence that had about 30 words or less. And it said, our vision is to become the world's leading provider of blah, whatever it is, to the such and so markets, and we'll be number 1 or number 2 in the markets we serve. You ever heard that, Zondra? All right. And then you could take that vision statement and you could take it right across the street to your competitor and take your name out and stick their name in, and voila, you have a vision statement for that company too. All right, as you can tell, I'm making fun of that because often that really wasn't very useful. Doesn't help you. Now, there were some companies that could come up with one statement that actually was a drastic departure from where they were, and it was useful because it gave them a different compass. It gave them a different direction to go after. All right, so I just want to illustrate that because I want you to have this in your head. Many would say, you know, if the elders are talking about a vision, then that means they're going to come out with a vision statement, a 1-sentence, 30-word compound sentence thing, and I'm just saying, no, that's not what we're talking about here. We do not want to come up in 4 or 5 months with a vision statement that's 1 30-word compound sentence. Instead, what we want to do is write a short story. A short story that describes where we think we're going in 10 years and paints a vision. And it answers questions like this. We go forward 10 years, and you come to church at West Houston. You drive up to this campus. What do you see? Do you see these very buildings that you see right today? Do you see another building? A bigger building? Do you see 8,000 people coming to church here? Or do you see 1,000 people coming to church here? Do you actually, on church 10 years from now, do you actually don't drive to this campus? You drive to another location that we might call a satellite that actually has the sermon beamed through technology from this building to there. That's where the sermon comes from. And the rest of the worship happens locally in a satellite location. Might be in a church building or a strip mall or something else like that. Is that what happens in 10 years? Or do you drive to church at someone's house? You're part of the West Houston Church of Christ that meets at Evelyn's house. And you've got 40 people that meet there on a Sunday morning and they take communion together and they do whatever it is they do there. That could be a vision for West Houston. How do you engage the community? Do you see them on Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night? Or do you see them on Monday night and Tuesday night and Thursday night because you've got addiction recovery? Maybe you have a home for unwed mothers. Maybe you have a soup kitchen that operates on Saturday morning. What is it that you do? Right? When you think about where we spend our money in 10 years, if you were to know that, and by the way, you're all privileged to know that, where we spend our money, is it half of it going to other countries where we're teaching Jesus? Or is 100% of it going to this community to teach Jesus? When you start answering questions like that, you start to paint a vision, and you can't do that in one sentence that's 30 words, right? When you think about how are you known, do you say, well, we're known by the brotherhood this way? Or you actually say, actually, we don't care how we're known by the brotherhood. We want to know how we're known by the neighborhood. And so we're famous to the neighborhood because they say, that's the church that does this and that and that. When you start answering these questions, and right now we do not know the answers to those questions, that's why we're doing what we're doing now. When you start answering those questions, you start to write a short story, and you paint a picture that basically becomes a day in the life at West Houston. Right? It's several pages, and it answers those questions that I've just laid out. What we want to do as an eldership is write that short story. All right? Now, why do you even need a vision? As you can imagine, by the way, let's just complete this by saying this. This too evolves over time, every couple years, every 5 years, every 6 years. It kind of depends, and the reason it does is because that vision answers the question, what will it be like to do this mission with these talents in that environment? And if this is changing and that's changing, then that's going to change, right? This won't, Everything else does. Why do you need a vision? So if you're trying to lead as an elder, as we are trying to do this, and we have people, sincere seekers of God's will, coming to us every week, which they do, and say, you know what, Scott, we need to do this. You know what, Ken, we need to invest in that. You know what, James Ford, we need to create a ministry for that. That comes up all the time. If we have no idea where we're going, we're likely to say, sounds good, or actually, first come, first serve. Whatever comes up and we've got room for, we take, and once we run out, you're just out. That's one way to do it. You know, there's a scripture in the Bible, in Proverbs, that says, where there's no vision, the people perish. It's my favorite translation. There's other translations of that. And I believe that. I believe that with individuals and organizations. If you don't have a clear picture in your head where you're going as an organization, you're going to end up somewhere, and it won't be where you planned when you start, and probably will be less than you wish it was. And when it comes to church leadership, if you don't feel like you've heard God's calling, and you don't have that vision built in the Holy Spirit, you're going to end up in some place that has less impact for the kingdom than it should. And so when you think of yourself as a 5-talent steward, you're going to be returning back 2 or 3. We don't want to be in that business. We're not the smartest Bible scholars in the world, but we know one thing: getting handed 5 talents and returning 2 was not good. Right? Getting handed 1 and returning 1 was terrible. We learned in that particular parable. And so we don't want to do that. Being handed 5 and returning 5 more, that's what we want to do, and that's what we think we're called to do. So when you have a vision in your mind, then you start saying, okay, we've got a new ministry idea, and we say, you know what, God is calling us. We spend a lot of time listening to Him. God's calling us to this, and that doesn't fit with what we're doing. And so part of the things that you ask your leaders to do at eldership is to make hard choices around things, and we want to be able to do that. To do that, we need to know where we're going. The second thing is, how do you know what vision you have? And this is the last bit that I want to talk about before turning back over to Ken. How do you know what vision you have? Well, we think God will reveal this to us. We spent a lot of time praying about this, talking about this. We're listening for the Spirit to speak to us in ways that He will do. We've reflected, we've discussed it, and I can tell you a couple things. We feel confident He's going to share with us what it is, one. Secondly, today we do not know what it is. We do not have an agenda. We don't have something we're wanting to do that, you know, we just need to kind of get everybody on board so we can go do it. Trust me, you should be at the last, you said 28 elders meetings. You should be at the last several. We are not clear on where we're going. We say that. That's not a confession. That's not a wrong thing. That's just where we are. And we want to get to a place that we know where that is. So how do you do that? How does God speak to you anyway? Well, in Exodus, He spoke to Moses from a burning bush. In Numbers 22, He spoke to Balaam through the mouth of a donkey. And so we know there's a lot of ways that God can speak to us today, but one of His favorite ways in the Bible was speaking to His people through other people. And so not just prophets, by the way, many others. And so one of the things that we said what we need to do is listen to our brothers and sisters talk to us. And that's going to help us, and we're going to listen to God by listening to them. And so that leads us all to where we are today, which is we intend to write this short story that starts to paint a picture of what God is calling us to be, and we're going to do that by listening to what He tells us. And one major piece of that process is listening to you. We have 900 plus people that come to church here every day. We'd be happy to talk to 900. We thought about saying, let's just invite whoever wants to talk to us to come talk to us. We could have done that. If we'd done that, we probably would have gotten about 20 or 30 conversations, which would have been useful. But what might be better, we thought, was let's push it and let's try to talk to 150 people. Now, for sake of speed, we didn't decide we were going to just talk to all 900 till we got through. But we said, if you look at our whole body, and let's just look at picking kind of representative sample folks. I'd like to tell you you're special, but actually you're not much special than anybody else. You just look like, in total, like the rest of the congregation. And so we wanted to talk to a broad array of folks, young, old, new, been here forever. We're talking to people who've left, by the way. You should know that. We're talking to a lot of folks because we want to listen to what God has to tell us about what we should become. And so that's the reason for bringing you here today. Kenneth's going to tell you now about how we want to move the next few weeks to get this moving.